Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. Está bien. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you for Creative Mornings Tijuana and San Diego for inviting me to be part of this month's speaker. It's an honor seeing how important this collaboration between the two cities and the two countries is, so I'm very happy to be here. The title of my talk is called Un reflejo de mí y de mi entorno, which translates to a reflection of myself and my surroundings. With the theme reflection, the first definition that I thought of was reflection in English, which was a mirrored reflection. And when I translated that reflection into Spanish, in Spanish it translates directly into reflexión, which is more of a self-reflection, where I decided to create this talk into two parts, which is a mirrored reflection and how my work mirrors my surrounding, and then a second definition of self-reflection, seeing how my trajectory and my whole life has been transforming into what Perro y Arena is now. And I'm going to breathe, and I'm a little nervous, but so we all breathe. But yes, thank you for having me. So, un reflejo de Socrates Medina, which is me. Early life, I was born in Tijuana, Baja California in December 1991, and I grew up in this border region, which is Tijuana, San Diego. I would go to school to San Diego, cross early morning every day. Then we decided to move to San Diego so I could go to public school, where, so I was raised in these two cities. Growing up, I also did a lot of extracurricular activities, a lot of different sports that didn't work out. But art was always an activity that I enjoyed doing, and it had a big impact in my life. Very early on, I started taking art classes with my aunt, who's an artist. She started teaching us painting, sculpture, with paper mache, with different mediums. So that was a very first introduction to art. A very big influence in my work and in my life is my grandma. Growing up, she would tell us a lot of Greek stories, always like the Medusa and Greek mythology, like Hercules. So that really had a lot of impact in me appreciating Greek art and seeing how her stories would be narrated and illustrated in Greek vessels, vases, cups, murals. So yes, she was very proud of her Greek heritage, and that had a big impact in my work. Then another impact was Pokemon. So growing up, I was really obsessed with animals. And I would write down a glossary of animals, alphabetical order, and I would find a new animal, so impala. So I would have to go back, erase, and start writing my animals in alphabetical order. I also wanted to be a veterinarian growing up. And I volunteered as a veterinarian. A little dog died, so I was like out of that. And then the story with Pokemon is that I was really obsessed, and not obsessed, but really interested in the evolution of the animals. So I would see how this little fox with 2 tails would transform into a bigger fox, wolf with 9 tails. So that was something that really interested me, more than the cartoon itself. So one morning I went to my mom and I asked her to buy me a set of animal plastic figurines to play with them. But instead she decided to buy me a book that had all the Pokemons and a block of clay. And with that, I started creating my own Pokemon. So I would create these Pokemons and I would create the transformations with the clay itself. And that really got started to me playing with my hands and getting my hands dirty with clay, it was a very plastic clay. It wasn't earth clay. It was like plastilina, like Play-Doh. And then growing up, I went to high school. I did a lot of art in high school. I had an exhibition that was made with all recycled materials that showcased in IMAC in 2010 at the Instituto Municipal de Arte y Cultura in Tijuana. I later went to community college here in San Diego, where I studied typography, photography, museum studies, and exhibition skills. And that all got me really interested in the art and all the various fields around it. I also worked in a gallery where we did art and framing, so I would sell art and also frame art. So all those little things have been a role in how I work now. Then I went to architecture school at Cal Poly Pomona, and during my time there, I also worked at the University Gallery for 4.5 years. And also during my last year of Cal Poly Pomona, I took my first ceramics class. And this was the first figurine that I made, which is right on top of the projector. And during that class, it was like a full circle for me. So it brought me back to my childhood, making Pokemons out of clay. And it was very intuitive, very nostalgic, very easy for me to do that. So I took this class as a distraction from architecture, and it really distracted me. I did graduate from architecture, and I worked for Toller Architecture in LA, where I was hired based on my gallery experience, where I was managing an installation of about 30 people for an artist. So this was my first job in the architecture firm. And my work there, I really loved working in the office. We did a lot of residential, cultural work, a lot of galleries. So it was still very part of my interest, like working in this field. And at the same time, while I was working in architecture, I joined a ceramic studio in Los Angeles, where I would just continue my ceramic education and do it as a night hobby. So I would get off work around 6, go eat, go to the ceramic studio, and start just playing around with clay. And then playing around started becoming more of a routine. People started getting more interested in my work, and then a gallery reached out for me to show with them. And at first it was like, oh, we have an artist from Mexico City, you really complement their work, so it would be nice if you have 2 pieces to show. And I was like, okay, perfect, I'll make 2 pieces. Then she said, you know what, let's just have your own solo show, so you'll be showing with this Mexico City artist, her show and your show. So then I decided to take that exhibition as a test. And I said, if I sell out this 15-piece exhibition, I'll quit my job as an architect and focus on this full time. And it happened. I sent out my inventory list to the gallery. They sent it out to their email list, and the collection sold 3 days before it opened to the public. So then the next morning, I decided to quit architecture. Yes. I decided to quit architecture, my LA life, and move back to Tijuana, where Perro y Arena became my full-time job. So I tell you all this trajectory because it's really a full circle of all the little different things that I've worked on, the art classes that I took, and it was at my last year of architecture school where I really found this passion that I had. And everything that I've done somehow has played a role in what I do and how I work now. And with this is the second part of the talk, which is reflection, and a reflection of my surrounding, and with this, a little bit of my creative process in the studio. So please welcome to my studio, Perro y Arena. The studio is located in Tijuana, Baja California. It's a really small, cozy space. Here I work every day from 10 to 4:30 is my set schedule, but then it goes earlier and later. The space is really small, very intimate. I have a small outdoor space that I'm able to work. It has a roof outside, so I'm really able to work there throughout the whole year. Also, I can now refer to Perro y Arena as we, since my studio grew with a new assistant, so now it's a 2-person studio. Davina joined this year to help me with studio production, so now the studio has really grown in production and reaching new clients and new goals. So this is us working in the studio where everything is made by us, made by hand, painted. Here's us, like a daily routine. We come to the studio, we have our to-do list that is constantly changing. We add, we remove the sketches that I make of the pieces that I want to explore and work on. And that's me making my morning coffee in the studio. When making a piece, the first step that I take is always choosing the clay and the clay color that I want to work with. It really depends on the collection that I want to work on and who the collection is going for. So sometimes depending on the city, the type of stuff, pieces that the gallery sells, that's how I decide to choose what color palette I'm gonna I'm gonna work on. So I have this color palette on the walls that is all hung for me to choose the clay body and the colors that I use. And this is how the colors and clays are in its final state. The color palette and clay bodies that I use also really reflect the color, the tones, the textures of California and Baja California, which is, that's my main goal, to be able to reflect these landscapes through the clay itself. So as I mentioned, each piece is made by hand in the studio. I use different techniques like pinch pot, coiling. The wheel, I don't really throw that much because it can get really messy, and yeah, I just try to stay to hand building. I don't use molds. I have a couple molds that I use that are for like some faces where it's all pushing, like the clay into the mold is not really pouring. So yes, everything is made by hand, and this is a picture of how the studio looks when all the pieces are drying. The drying process is probably one that takes the longest because you really have to have the piece be completely dry before you want to fire it. Pieces can take up from 2 to 3 weeks depending on the thickness, the construction material, and if you don't fire it properly, then the piece can explode in the kiln. And then this is also what makes the process of ceramics be a bit longer. So if I narrow down the time to making one piece, it can take up to a day. But in reality, each piece takes about 3 to 4 weeks to complete from start to finish. And then another part of the process that also takes a while is painting the pieces. So usually after the piece goes to the first fire, after the first fire, that's when I paint it. I also do this as a test, so if there are any issues with the first fire, I didn't waste my time painting the piece and then something happened to it. But yes, each piece is hand painted by me. A small mezcalero, which is a small cup, can take from 15 to 20 minutes. A bigger cup or a mug can take from 30 to 60 minutes, and then bigger vases can take up to 3 hours in painting. So basically a production time for just like building the piece can take from 4 to 5 hours for the bigger pieces. Then the subject that I illustrate in my work is all the local native flora and fauna. When I first started Perro y Arena, I wanted to focus on the Mexican flora and fauna. So I started painting and building the ajolote, the choloscuincle, the quetzal. The quetzal is Mexico's parrot, and the ajolote is a Mexican salamander. But when I would go out on a walk, living in LA, I didn't see these animals. I didn't see an ajolote in the pond, or I didn't see quetzal singing and flying around us. So I really started to focus on animals that I coexist with, animals that if I go on a walk, I would see. So these were animals that were very familiar to what my Mexico is. So I decided to focus on the coyote, which was an animal that I would see on my morning walks, the rabbit, the mountain lions, crows, the ram, which is also here in Joshua Tree. And then I started working with different symbols that I would abstract in my work. Like this zigzag line really represents like the earth, and then the little quotes that I do around the animals represent sound and movement. The plant shapes are representing of hands and different plants, like the cactus, agave, or cotillo. So these are the native plants that have been really abstracted to be included in my work. Then all of my pieces are carefully transported so that they can be fired off in a different location, and Lustre Studio is where I fire all of my work. So every time I have to, once the piece is dry, I package it, drive it. It's a 3-minute drive to my friends at Lustre, and that's where all my work gets fired. And here's one piece that made it out alive after a massive eruption in the kiln. But yes, and then another part of my process that is the process that I really enjoy the most is photographing my finished work. So I use a lot of different solid backgrounds to really emphasize the piece and the colors and textures. These are also times that I'm able to really create different scenes and environments where you can see the piece and see how it can come to life. I use stop motion and video to create movement and to rotate the piece. And yes, and a lot of the color palette that I use is also a reflection of the colors of the clay. So sometimes it can be a very contrasting color, but also I very much enjoy keeping it very monochromatic. So you see a lot of, if I use a red clay body with the bright pigments, I use maybe a pink color background to really like emphasize and complement the work. And this is us in the studio where we also photograph the pieces. Here's how you can see how it looks in my studio and then how the final photography comes out. So all of my photos are taken with a camera and then I edit all of them in Photoshop. So here you can see of how the photo station is in the studio and the final piece. So here are the different colors and scenes that I create with my work. Here is where you see a very monochromatic photo, and then, so these are all final product photographies that I use to post on my Instagram and to share my work. And here are the different little scenes. For a lot of them, I make a little video. So here, the little bull is an incense burner. So there's a little video that shows that bull walking into the picture and then the incense burning through a little hole that has on the top. And then another part that I really enjoy is the product photography in the field. Let me take my notes for this. So in product photography is a reflection of the diverse landscapes that surround us, like the mountains, forests, deserts, and beaches. It embodies the spirit of the coyotes, birds, rabbits, plants that share our environment. So I'm basically taking all these pieces and in a way placing them in their natural environments. Here I traveled, usually when I do a road trip around California, Baja California, I take the pieces with me when I can go out and photograph them. Here, these textile pieces that I made in collaboration with Abuelita Borrego, a project based in Guadalajara, and with my sister, Isa Guadalupe, I took these pieces and photographed them in Borrego Springs. And then these, I took them on a trip to see the desert blooms. So here I'm bringing these animals and putting them in a natural environment that could be their home. This photo was taken at the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which is my first time going, carrying these like textiles, my camera. I didn't think it was gonna be that hard getting down there, and I thought the earth was gonna be soft, but it's sand that has been petrified into this like mountain, so it was very rough. And then I was very close in giving up with this photo shoot, and my sister was like, let's just do it, we're already here. And then we look back and we see the trail that we took down, and that's where we decided to capture this photo, and I loved that, how the pictures turned out. And then this is in the Santa Maria Mountains. These were also on our road trip to Joshua Tree that we took as a family, and we decided to stop along the way in the various beautiful landscapes that exist around us. This was a photo that I did. I let my sister borrow some masks for a photo shoot that she did in the Laguna Salada in Mexicali. And also this was a collection that I worked on with my sister where we merged my illustrations and her clothing design, and we photographed in the Vasquez Rocks, which is in Agua Dulce near North LA County. And lastly, this was a piece that I took on a trip to Portland, Oregon. And these photos were taken in Oregon in the Painted Hills. And here, again, I'm taking the pieces to these natural environments and see how they would look in a place that they could call home. And also, all these places are things that we see, that we don't know exist, and that we can always drive a couple minutes to and see the beautiful landscapes that are basically my source of inspiration. And yeah, so Perro y Arena. Through my work, I seek to capture the vibrant colors, rich textures, and essence of the Californias. I invite you to connect deeply with the beauty and life that thrives around us. where you're able to travel to a mythical world where we can dance with coyotes and hares under the moonlight. This is basically what I want the viewer to feel when I'm doing my work, that you're able to connect with the natural landscape that surround us and that have been forming Perro y Arena. I also wanted to invite you all to a gallery exhibition that I have in South Park that opened last week. There you can see a variety of work that I've done, like the textile pieces that I showed you, a lot of framed work as well. And yes, the work is all available for purchase, and a part of it is going to go to an organization that I really enjoy working with, which is Un Mar de Colores, and 10% of the sales will be going to them. And thank you, yes. That was my 30-second pitch.